Welcome to the Decleated Football Podcast. I'm your host, Seamus, joined by my co-host, John Restrepo. And John, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to all those tuning in. Like the famous TikTok sound, with that, the 2025 regular season has come to an end officially here. I feel like we say the same thing every year at this time. I can't believe it was just last week. I feel like it was September and we were starting it off and everybody was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited about where their seasons would go. And now we're down to 14 teams left. And unfortunately for you and many in this area, the Giants are not one of those teams. So obviously we've heard a lot this year about the ups and the downs and maybe some more downs than ups. But I am very curious to get your final sort of regular season holistic thoughts on what this 2025 season meant.
Yeah, it's really hard to find meaning in this 2025 season. And first of all, Happy New Year, Seamus. Glad to be back on here. Last episode that we'll talk about the regular season. Finding meaning has been the hardest thing to do with this Giants season. You know, you think that going into this year, rookie quarterback, but not a ton of expectations. You know, you're hoping to get just competitive football. And the thing that I had been banging the table about before the season had started was playing meaningful games beyond the month of September. And I mean, just in similar Giants fashion as, within the last decade, we've kind of realized really quickly that we were not going to get any of that. We sign a aging Russell Wilson, who we think is going to be the starter for the entire season, and have Jackson Dart, our rookie quarterback, learn behind him. That goes out the window. Jackson Dart's thrust in. He plays exceptionally well, but now we have a defense that cannot close out a football game. Couple games pass by. We have our Super Bowl of the 2025 season was us beating the Eagles on primetime. And then after that, it was the offense looked amazing. Defense collapsing. Repeat that 3 weeks in a row. Dable, our head coach, our offensive guru, is gone. A couple weeks later, our defensive coordinator's gone. And Jackson Dart dealing with the concussion thing, which is a whole narrative that's been blown way out of proportion. I've talked about that ad nauseum. We have Mike Kafka, who initially coming in as the interim head coach for Brian Dable was very aggressive and then kind of went a complete 180 and decided to be super careful with the treatment of Jackson Dart and coaching him not to lose instead of just trying to develop the player and make him go out, make some mistakes. The season's lost already. And then kind of switching back on it the last two games. Of course, where we're poised for potential number one draft pick in the 2026 draft, which I'm not super mad about considering we have a quarterback already. Again, it'd be nice to have a little more power if we were higher up in the draft order. But you think after all this turmoil, everything that I've spoken to you, the ups and downs, the twists and turns, that the organization wouldn't look to start fresh across the board. Unfortunately, though, that is not the case. Joe Schoen, who I have been quite critical of, not just this year, but in years past, especially this year, when you're seeing 4 years of draft classes and free agent classes and personnel decisions on who to keep and who to let go of year in and year out. And you see a lot of mistakes, probably more mistakes than good, although there has been some good, to give him a little bit of credit here. You think that, you watch other teams, Atlanta, who had a better season than us, that has won more games this season than the Giants have in the last two. Have a disappointing season, not win enough. They fire the head coach and the GM. We are still holding on to our GM. I don't agree with it, but I'm not rooting for the guy's downfall. I mean, I'm praying that we can get this thing turned around, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So it's a lot. There's no resolve to the end of the season, which is my biggest thing, and it just leaves you with this lingering uncertainty to the franchise, not just for the offseason, not just for next year, but potentially years going forward. It's just not a good position. I wish I had something more positive to say. And I mean, I'll get to a couple, glimmers of hope here in a second, but there's just so much just just the air just feels thick. You know what I mean? We are not by any means the worst team in the NFL, but we're not far from it. And we haven't done anything to show that we're closing this chapter and moving on to a new one. We're still lingering pieces of this stinking, putrid, losing organization, which I just cannot stand. And Seamus, I know you're probably thinking to yourself right now, John, why are you so miserable? The Giants have finally won consecutive games for the first time since 2022. Where we just entered 2026. It's been 3 calendar years since your team has won in consecutive weeks. But when you look at it, and like I just said, when we're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the worst record in the league, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are clearly not trying to win this game, how, I understand, yes, Jackson Dart should be winning this game. And I'm glad that he is in that, vacuumed outlook of it. But how am I supposed to get excited for winning back-to-back games? Our final record was 4-13. We're going into another year with this general manager, and again, I hate to keep ragging on it, but where we have improved our win total by 1 win from last year. We have 7 wins in the last 2 years. And in the first time we get back-to-back wins, it plummets our draft stock. And these are teams that we should be beating with our hands tied behind our back regardless. So, cool. I'm glad that, we got this little, hit of dopamine to make us be happy going into the offseason. But, I mean, like I said two minutes ago, I mean, it's this lingering, uncertainty in the water that I just really, really don't like. So, yeah. That's my synopsis of the 2025 season for the Giants. A whole lot of uncertainty and a lot of unresolved finishes to everything between the games, the personnel, the players, across the board. It is just an awful, awful feeling right now.
Yeah, it's hard to be excited about back-to-back wins when the wins and losses haven't necessarily mattered, at least to you, in this season for months now. That was not really ever the point. Once Jackson Dart took over, it was progress, right? Qualitative progress, not quantitatively what is our record, because we're not going to be a playoff team. We're not going to win the division. Those things that you shoot for when you are coming out of the other side of a rebuild was not really what we were looking for here. It was the qualitative just progress overall. And yeah, hey, do we have our guy at the quarterback room? Do we have our guy as the head coach? Do we have our guy in the front office? And to your point, maybe you got the answer to the quarterback question, maybe.
Yeah.
But because the other two positions are uncertain in the head coach and the GM, you don't really know. Could you get a head coach that comes in and gets Jackson Dart's full potential? Absolutely. Could you get a head coach that comes in and shits the bed and just absolutely does nothing with him? Sure. So
yeah,
it's hard to feel, like you said, it's a bit unresolved, and
or even the worst thing too is a head coach should come in here and assume Jackson Dart's, he's already good. We saw what he did last year. We don't need to put as much effort into developing him, which I think is a mistake. I think he's still got a long way to go, especially as a passer in the league. So I think, to your point, the management of Jackson Dart going forward is huge when it comes to whoever our new head coach is going to be.
So anyway, all that to say, I certainly don't blame you for not trying to feel some kind of false confidence about these two, back-to-back wins. That's great. You've reset the shot clock, so to speak, on that statistics now. So hopefully, it's not 3 more years down the road where you're saying, well, it's been since, the end of the 2025 season that we won back-to-back. You know what I mean? Hopefully, that's really the only solace I'd be taking from that stat, because it's not super meaningful otherwise.
It's really just an optics thing, which again I don't care about. I'd rather lose the games now and be in a better position going forward. But anyway, not to get really dwell on this for too much longer. I think in terms of actually moving forward from this season, it is nice to know that we have a group of young guys coming back next year who either are just beginning their football journey, I got Jackson Dart, or, whether it's guys coming back from injury, Cam Scatabo, Malik Neighbors, all these guys who are part of this young core that at least gives us some optimism about this team going forward. We have pieces on the defensive side. We haven't really seen it much until, again, these last two meaningless games anyway, for these pieces to kind of gel together and, start to look like a formidable defense. So there is something tangible there, but the reality of this roster and the situation is there's still a lot of holes to fill. We thought there were holes going into this season, and I don't know if the list has grown, but it feels like we're kind of the same spot, minus the quarterback. That is my issue with this offseason for the Giants, is that going forward with Joe Schoen, you're really putting him in a pinch here to literally knock everything out of the park in this offseason. We do not have a third-round pick. We pick first, second, and then it's just day 3 picks. And by then, who knows? That's why if you had a number 1, a number 2, even a number 3 pick, the ability for you to potentially trade back and gain more pieces, and again, just have another opportunity to take a good player. You never know what you're going to get. The surefire guys could be terrible. The people that on draft night you think are terrible could be great. For the most part, it's situation based, and you just never know what you're going to get. So the more chances you have at doing that, at drafting players, the better. So, we're already at a disadvantage there, which isn't great. But, I will say I'm very curious, but kind of hopeful towards who we're hiring as the head coach. I think that as crazy as it is, and as much as I cannot stand the front office of this team, I think that the Giants, thankfully, because of Jackson Dart, are somewhat of a attractive job opportunity for a potential head coach. And I probably said this on this podcast before too, moving into some of the, head coaching possibilities here, but this is the time to do it. I had been like begging the Browns to let go of Kevin Stefanski. And I think he is a rare mix of something that I think realistically makes sense, would help the development of Jackson Dart, and is something that the ownership is looking for. A more experienced guy, a 2-time coach of the year, a guy who's brought Joe Flacco and a terrible roster to the playoffs and won a playoff game. So I think just the fact that Kevin Stefanski was basically forced by the Browns to draft a quarterback that he didn't want, and clearly made no effort of hiding it, now gets an opportunity to be with another young quarterback who he's seen some pretty great things from in his rookie year, and can now have that guy as his building block, and a little more stable of an organization, might get a longer leash. I think that is my ideal. Now that he's available on the market, hire him. If not, give me a Shula, give me a Kubiak, give me one of those guys.
He is a rare diamond in the rough almost type coach in these coaching carousels. And we've seen 2 now in the last 2 years. And the one last year was kind of he was kind of fake. You've got a guy like Vrabel who gets fired in Tennessee for whatever extracurricular BS reasons that was, who clearly was very widely regarded as a strong head coaching candidate, and personally just said, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to really be, selective with the teams that have coaching opportunities. I think he probably, maybe there's some backdoor conversations with the Patriots, whatever. We don't have to get into that. But I think he knew that at least that was potentially coming down the pike next year. And you've got a similar situation with Stefanski now, where he instantly has to be the number 1 choice on every team's board. I mean, like you said, 2-time coach of the year. He's an experienced guy, offensive guru, has worked with a plethora of quarterbacks and has made it work. I mean, he's the most successful coach in Browns in the last 20 years for the Cleveland Browns.
In our lifetime, yeah, for sure.
Right. He's won 2 playoff games in Cleveland, quarterbacked by Joe Flacco and Baker Mayfield, which I didn't really make this connection until you just started talking about it. But, I mean, if he liked coaching Baker Mayfield, I don't know if he did, but I imagine they won a playoff game together. He might like coaching Jackson Dart, too. They're kind of similar players, and they're a little headstrong, and like kind of like to do things the way that they like to do them, and they've got a little extra swagger, and they can throw the ball, like to run the ball a little bit. Like they're similar players. So I think if I'm Kevin Stefanski, the Giants are an interesting spot. Obviously, I'm sure he'd like to be selective with his next opportunity coming from Cleveland and probably being a little scarred from that experience. But
I'm sure.
Top 5 pick, and a rookie quarterback and a young offensive core. I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
And look, if you're the Giants, this is where you really have to go out and set yourself aside from the slop that we've been associating ourselves with. We have been the Jets, the Browns, the Titans, etc. for the last 10 years. If you want a guy like this, if this is your ideal candidate, which based on conversations throughout this season, what we've heard from ownership and the general manager, this is their guy. Go out and get him. Give him an offer that they cannot refuse. Throw the checkbook down and say, write your number. Done. And get your guy. Because like you said with Vrabel, you see what a difference the coaching makes on a team that needs an identity, that needs discipline, that needs just someone who's level-headed, who at least to my knowledge, he seems pretty level-headed, right to storm. You don't get too much out of him. That is the guy that we need. So that is my. If I have one wish for the Giants, is to do what you got to do. Separate yourself from the garbage you've been associating with for the last decade and go out and make a splash hire like this, because you've tried all the new guys on the block and none of them have worked. Let's leave no questions when he leaves this building for an interview, and give him what he wants and watch your team start to reap the benefits of good coaching. So that's what I will leave it on. I don't want to spend too much more time on the Giants. That was good little run through the season. Some things that I'm looking forward to, some things that I'm hoping for. It would be really nice to get some headlines for the Giants in the next couple weeks, even though we are still going through the playoffs. But if we do make some kind of hire, that would get my gears turning again. I will say, though, and I've been saying this for the last few years, but I am quite happy that the NFL regular season is over. I now no longer have to be burdened by this team and can just enjoy as a casual fan the NFL playoff landscape as a whole. That landscape, which does include your Green Bay Packers.
It does. Despite what you may or may not have seen on television this Sunday, which looked like anything but a playoff team. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I also didn't even watch the football game.
I wouldn't say it hardly looked like an NFL game.
Yeah, it was not great. And I didn't even realize this. I assumed Max Brosmer played the whole game for Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy played half of this football game. And they
Did he
scored
really?
16 points. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So
it was a good,
Jefferson,
Well, it was, Giants, it was a very, culture win. McCarthy gets another win, build his confidence going into the offseason, whatever, against the backups for the Green Bay.
I mean, that's fine. It's just, I was expecting, if that was the case, that, they would have scored 40 points. They scored 16.
Yeah, they probably should have. Yeah.
It wasn't, it's not like anything crazy happened. It seemed like a total snooze fest on both sides. But, there is some fun news. The first thing is, unfortunately, we did not find a diamond in the rough in Clayton Tune. I was kind of hoping, hey, maybe we got something. Got ourselves a little Jimmy Garoppolo situation here. Malik Willis probably not going to be back in Green Bay next year. But Clayton Tune, could he be the backup? Probably not. But that.
It sounds like you will be in the market for for a backup quarterback. Then, unfortunately,
we likely will. You can book a day 3 quarterback from Louisiana Monroe or. Western Kentucky or something like that, April 20, whatever that is, 26th or whatever day 3 is. So unfortunately, Clayton Tune probably not going to be that guy. Um, the only other like fun thing that happened this week was I kind of half jokingly when the Trayvon Diggs news was announced last week was like, hey, let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks here. Like this cornerback room has been questionable all year. Nate Hobbs on IR now, so like we're just banged up and kind of need bodies. Kamal Hadden also on IR, so like two corners like that had been getting playing time in the last couple games are out now, so you kind of just need bodies. And this is a former Pro Bowl corner, so I'm kind of excited about the fact that they signed him. Obviously, he's giving up a 158.3 passer rating with the Cowboys this year in 8 games. That's not great. But again, he has played at a Pro Bowl level before. Clearly, there's something to be desired there. There is a connection with the Packers pass game coordinator, and he was on the Alabama staff when Trayvon Diggs was there and changed his position to corner. So I don't know, I'm kind of hoping that like maybe something reignites a fire, the change of scenery. He's back with his boy Micah. They're close friends. Like I'm feeling like maybe there's a chance that like he does some things, that this is even like a Rasul Douglas-esque signing, right? Like I think I mentioned this a handful of weeks ago. Gutekunst needs to like sign somebody off the street and find that diamond in the rough like he has the last couple of years. Maybe Trayvon's that guy. Maybe he's the guy that just has, this storybook postseason. He has one pick a game for the next 3 games and is like a
I was going to say, you really only need him to be good for this week. If you move on the week after that, and then if you keep moving on, just 4 weeks of football, that's all you need out of him right now. So
right. And if it's the best 4-game stretch of his life, like who's to say that it can't be? So that's kind of where I'm at now. Like we kind of have nothing to lose. Like if he plays poorly, all right, pull him out. Like I don't even know if he's going to start. I don't know what the situation is, but I think he allowed one catch for 4 yards and like a 58 passer rating this week against the Vikings, as opposed to the perfect passer rating he had allowed thus far. So, and hey, look, the Vikings wide receiver core is not nothing. You know what I mean? Like they've got some guys, and the Vikings have won some games with JJ McCarthy. So it's not like the Salvation Army they were playing against this week. It was an NFL team who, I don't know, I guess seemingly had incentives or something to play for. I don't know. But nonetheless, I'm excited about that. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge and willingness to discuss last week's game. There's kind of nothing else to say.
Yeah, hey, onward and upward, though. Your season is not over.
It's not. And pretty much everything that has happened up to this point is meaningless. It's all getting flushed down the toilet. All the narratives, all the minutia, all the injuries, all the everything. It's a blank slate. Everybody is 0-0 now. It's anybody's game. Nothing else matters. And you know what? I'm starting, and maybe this is just me giving myself some self-talk and trying to be positive and give myself a reason to be maybe more excited than I should be. I've already mentioned I feel much better having lost to the Bears once in the regular season going back to Chicago than I would have if we swept them in the regular season. It's really hard to beat the same team 3 times in a season. Really hard.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew that quote was going in there.
So I already have that in my back pocket. Now I've sort of got this feeling similar to 2 years ago when we went into Dallas as the 7th seed, where I was like, I mean, that was obviously Jordan Love's first year, but you're like, everything is up. We already made it. That was the goal. We make the playoffs, just make the dance, and then to win the game was just icing on the cake. So I'm almost, not quite, but we're almost in that same territory. We're like, we lost our second best player this year, the guy who was supposed to not only make up for the lack of a pass rush, but also the lack of a secondary that we don't have, and clearly was, if you've watched the last 3 games, like he was clearly doing both of those things, which is obviously a huge impact. And not to mention the litany of other injuries, Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed and Christian Watson throughout the year and whatever. So I kind of feel like playing with house money a little bit. Like, hey, if we lose this game, like, it makes sense that we lost this game.
Coming from, a Giants fan myself, like, we thrive in the underdog position, and that's exactly where you guys are. It's tough because it really does. It did feel like the Micah Parsons injury was the final blow that, maybe they're just not that team anymore. Like they just haven't seemed to be the same since. But also to your point, I mean, they really don't have anything to lose going into Soldier Field. Like the odds and the narrative stacked against you, whatever. And who knows? That could be the fuel that you guys need. So, personally, don't know if I'm going to be betting on the Packers this week, but I wouldn't count them out. I'll say that.
And to that point, like this game opened as a pick'em, and I've seen on different books, like I've seen Bears -1.5, I've seen Packers -1.5. So I think everybody in the world thinks that this is going to be a real close game.
Yeah.
And look, this is a funny stat I saw today, but the Bears' last win of the season was against the Packers, and the Packers' last win of the season was against the Bears. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
it's very interesting, very competitive. They split games late in the season. The other thing that gives me confidence is this is the Packers team that just lost to the Bears on that last-minute drive in overtime. It's not like
Yeah.
it was the pre-Micah Parsons injury, and that's going to be it's this team as we see it
Yeah.
today. Like,
Yep.
oh, and by the way, Jordan Love didn't play most of that game, so it's actually hopefully a better version of the Packers team. So, you know what I mean? And it took again everything that kind of went the Bears' way the last time, and the wind blowing the right way, and the fumbles, and and it took overtime. So
Yeah.
I can't help but feel like we have every opportunity to win this football game. I don't know if there's any such thing as an ideal matchup, quote unquote, but like I said, I've been saying it for 3 weeks now. This is, I think, the ideal matchup for the Packers coming in. I'm very excited. I'm nervous. Obviously, you never want to lose a playoff game. You never want to lose a playoff game to the Bears. But this is the first time the Packers and the Bears have played in the playoffs since the 2010 NFC Championship game, which is fun and speaks to your point you've been hammering that this rivalry seems to be back and they're playing more meaningful games. And another thing that I hadn't really thought of, but I heard Dave Portnoy saying it today, and I just ate it up. This game means a hell of a lot more for the Bears than for the Packers. If the Packers lose, look, we went 9-7-1. It was already kind of a down year. We lost our best defensive player, our star player, right? Like Jordan Love missed some time. Clearly, this was not the roster as it was intended at the beginning of the year, right? The Bears, this is their best season in years. Like 5 or so years by a mile. If you go in at home as the number 2 seed and lose to the Packers without Micah Parsons, without Tucker Kraft, like that's a lot to lose. This season's almost for naught if you do that. If you lose to the 7 seed Packers at home, it's kind of like, what was it all for, you know? Versus I'm like, I'll be pissed off. Don't get me wrong. I'll be pissed off.
I'm sure.
But I'll be able to convince myself that like next year we'll be fine and we'll be right back to where we were this year. You know what I mean? The Bears, like, you hope, but like the question will be in the back of their minds, like, was this just a Cinderella run? Was this a fluke? Right? Like they haven't established a pattern yet. So
Fair, yeah.
I don't know. I like that too. I like that little bit of added pressure. So and we'll see what happens with Caleb Williams in the playoffs. He seemingly shines pretty bright when the lights are on. He played well last week in San Francisco in prime time. So it's not to say that he is incapable of that, but it would certainly warm my heart to watch him shit the bed on Saturday night. So
I'm sure.
we'll see. I think that's it, though. I'm going to let the game speak for itself. I don't want to, belabor the preview here. I'm very excited, and hopefully we can get back to some winning playoff performances here in Green Bay. The one fun little anecdote I will just throw in here before we get too sidetracked, and I think as I always am, was really hoping for the 4:30 slot on Sunday, right? Like that's kind of the primetime window. It's always seemingly the Fox window, right? Like that just feels like I feel at home when we have that spot. That's kind of where we always land. And it's kind of what I was selfishly hoping for this week. Saturday is always kind of weird too. Like you have plans, things are going on. Saturday's kind of tough. I just read, however, though, that every network, right, they get together this weekend as the games are going final and they try to negotiate who gets what game, and the NFL's trying to figure out the scheduling and what's fair, right, and who's traveling where, whatever, all the logistics. Every network said that the Packers-Bears was their top or second choice this week. They all wanted it. The other game that was they were flip-flopping was 49ers-Eagles. So 49ers-Eagles goes to Fox at 4:30. Let's assume that they had the number one choice. They wanted it. That makes sense. The NFL said, well, NBC, you got, the Sunday Night Football is traditionally that second slot. NBC, you just got a playoff game basically last night in Steelers-Ravens.
Yeah.
So we're not going to give you the second best game of the week. And then I guess they thought about Monday night for ESPN, but they have this trend of doing like a 4-5 seed game on Monday night, so they were like, we'll leave that. They allegedly, according to the Chicago Sun-Times, this was sort of in an effort to like throw Amazon Prime a bone and say, hey, look, and sort of send a message also to the legacy networks to say, like, look, Amazon is not, this isn't like Thursday Night Football from 5 years ago. We're not just going to put the worst game on Amazon. Like, they are here. They're here to stay. They're one of our partners too. And we're going to prioritize putting our best games on Amazon and on streaming, which is very interesting.
Wow. So it is on Amazon, the game. I didn't even realize
It is on Amazon. Yep, Saturday night prime time. And the other thought, I guess, which this makes sense to me too, there's still a sector of football fans who, don't have Prime or don't have the streaming services, and when it's not on legacy TV, it's too much effort. Maybe they have to go to a bar to watch it. They don't subscribe, right? Like, it's too much effort for them to watch the game. So if you put Bills Jaguars on Prime, there's a section of people that go, I'll just
I'm not even going to bother.
Later.
Yeah,
I'll just watch the highlights later. You put Packers Bears on Prime though, some of those guys are like, oh, I'll go out of my way to go watch that game. So sure. it does kind of make sense to me. So it's an interesting like little insight into the business side of football and what goes into these decisions on top of, who's traveling where and who played most recently and stuff like that.
That's pretty interesting though. I would have thought of all that behind the scenes stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. So, begrudgingly, I'll take Saturday at 8 p.m. and like you said, very much looking forward to this slate as a whole for the wildcard round and going forward.
All right, so before we jump in, and this has been our tradition every year since we started the podcast. Every week in the playoffs, we give our picks live. We don't share them with each other beforehand. But just before we get into that, Seamus, do you have any like teams that you think could make a deep playoff run? Any just overarching thoughts for just the playoffs in general, before we start getting into individual games and whatnot?
Yeah, two things come to mind when you say that. The first thing is I saw a stat that lends itself well to this. This will be the first year since 2008 that the AFC Championship game has not featured Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, or Mark Sanchez. Funny enough. So we are going to get a very diverse set of teams throughout the playoffs, which we already knew coming in, right? That the fact that the Chiefs weren't in it, right? The Lions aren't in it. Some of those teams from last year, we've got some turnover. So it's already set to be a very exciting playoff round, very exciting playoff season for, especially the people that don't have a dog in the race. So there should be some fresh faces, which is always exciting. But I will say the one team that I think I'm pulling for is subconsciously kind of the Patriots, honestly. Drake May, I really, every time I watch him play football, I'm enamored with how captivating he is. I just really enjoy watching him play quarterback. He's so fluid and natural, and the ball flies out of his hands. It's so pretty, and the deep ball is just gorgeous. He scrambles just enough. He's mobile just enough. Like, he is just so fun to watch. And I said it to my cousins who were down this weekend who are from Massachusetts. They're Patriot fans. And I said, in my head when I say that, I kind of have to differentiate, like, Tom Brady Patriots versus, like, current Patriots. Like, they have to be almost two separate entities.
The post-Brady era, yeah.
Correct. Because, like, just saying, like, oh, I'm rooting for the Patriots kind of gives me goosebumps. Like, I don't really like that idea.
It still feels weird, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that still feels a little wrong to me. But, like, this current Patriot team, as it stands today, still sort of an underdog. I know they're the number two seed. But, like, they are very much overachieving. They're doing much better this year than anybody expected them to. They're a fun team to watch. I don't know. They're my, like, kind of all of those things you just said wrapped into one. Sort of like dark horse, sort of unexpected team I'm kind of pulling for besides the Packers.
And a team realistically that could make a run too.
Yeah.
So it's a good a good team to pick. Anyone in the NFC?
I feel like I'm really hesitant to do that. Obviously,
it's hard to too when you're also in the playoffs yourself. So I don't blame you.
Yeah, so I don't think I even want to go there. The only other thing would be is I will say I'll be rooting for Aaron Rodgers as long as they're not playing the Packers. It was a lot of fun to watch him light it up on Sunday Night Football this week.
He carried them in that game, and for a decent chunk of that season, I give so. And I'm not the first in line to give my praise to Rodgers, but he certainly deserved it this year.
Yeah, he wasn't outstanding, but he was good, like just solid, very good, like 7, 8 out of 10 good
Yep.
quarterback this year. Hasn't thrown a pick since
And
August
didn't make
since
mistakes. Yep, exactly. Didn't
hasn't thrown
throw
a pick
hasn't
since
thrown a pick.
November 9th. Like it's he's doing
Yeah.
exactly what they're asking him to do. And you know what? For the first time, I texted you and maybe I jinxed it. I texted you right after the Steelers let Lamar walk right down the field. They convert that fourth down, and I said the defense and the special teams let him down again. Every
Yep.
year, doesn't matter if it's the Packers, doesn't matter if it's the Steelers. You special teams gives up this long kick return to set up a nice and easy drive. They need one first down, and
Yep.
they defense gave up 10 points in the first half, and then they gave up 14. And like you just blow
Yep.
this whole thing, and they obviously they missed the kick, and it all is well. But I'll definitely be pulling for Rodgers and the Steelers as long as they don't play the Packers.
Fair enough.
But I am interested to hear your thoughts, considering you don't have a dog in the fight. So it's kind of open season for you.
I do not. I will say, starting with the AFC, I agree wholeheartedly with the Patriots take. I think Drake May is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he was one of my favorite quarterbacks when he came out of college. I love Drake May. I'm not even going to hide it. I think he's awesome. I think that team in general is a good mix of everything that we talked about, being a dark horse, could make a run, etc. I do worry about their defensive line, though. I think in the playoffs, can they generate enough of a pass rush to really make an impact? I don't know, but I know Vrabel's going to have the boys buzzing, so I'm on your boat there. Another team in the AFC that I absolutely love this year, though, are the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they are getting hot at the right time. Trevor Lawrence, for the last month and a half of the season, is probably the best quarterback in football. And it's unbelievable. I think they got players all over the place. And I've thought this for years, too. Like, I feel like they've always had talented players at every major position group. And once again, they're here, they're back, and I think they could make a run sneakily. So I'm pulling for the Jags hardcore. On the NFC, I think my team. I know they are the 1 seed, but I really like the Seahawks this year. I worry about Sam Darnold in the playoffs, but we've seen him in some big games this year where when he was with the Vikings, he crumbled late in the season to the Lions. He had that late season test against San Francisco and came out on top. So, not to put all my chips on Seattle, but I mean they run the football well. They got a dual-headed monster. Sam Darnold's playing out of his mind. They have one of the best receivers in the league, and their defense is unbelievable. And they got a couple ex-Giants on there, so I'm rooting for Leonard Williams and I'm rooting for Julian Love. So yeah, Seattle's my NFC team, and I'll take Jacksonville as my AFC dark horse team. Anyway, I think it's time for us to actually go into this wild card round and make our picks, starting with the Rams at the Panthers. Seamus, who do you have in this one?
There's a lot of different factors, I think, here. The first of which is I don't underestimate the fact that this is the first game of the playoffs, and they're making a West Coast team travel to the East Coast for the earliest window available. Again, it's not quite the same as a 1 o'clock game, right, which would be like a 10 a.m. game for a West Coast team traveling on a traditional week. Still, I don't love that for the Rams. Not to mention, the Rams also lost in Carolina less than a month ago, so there's precedent here as well. But I don't know. I haven't been overly impressed with Carolina, especially this week in the last 2 weeks. So I think the Rams, who are the better team, are going to prevail. But I would not be shocked if this was a closer game than a lot of people are projecting.
Yeah, I'm not going to dwell on it any longer than you just did. I think it could be a sneakily close game. Panthers may cover, but I think the Rams win just because the Panthers really didn't do much to earn the playoff spot. They lost their getting game and just got lucky that Atlanta won. So I'm going to go Rams here as well.
I'll let you start with the next game because I think we know where my pick is going to be headed. But what are you thinking for Packers-Bears on Saturday night?
I hate to do it to you, Seamus, but I think I got to go Chicago. I was with you the last time that the Bears and the Packers met. The Bears came out on top there. I will be rooting for the Packers. I just think that my brain and my heart are telling me two different things, and I'm going to try to listen to my brain this time. I mentioned it earlier on this episode of the podcast, but I really do think that the Micah Parsons injury really took the wind out of the sails of the Packers, and I just doesn't feel like they're really getting enough momentum to get going here. I do think this is going to be a close game. It's going to be another gritty NFC North battle, but I think the Bears come out on top here and continue this Cinderella run with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson.
I won't linger for too long. I feel like you can piece together what I said earlier and this section, but I'm obviously going to stick with the Pack. Never going to pick against them.
Fair. Next up, the first Sunday game, and honestly a very, very intriguing matchup, is Bills at Jaguars. Seamus, I'm curious to see where your head's at for this one.
You want to talk about head versus heart. This game has that written all over it because I think if the Chiefs were in it, this would make my decision much easier because I would feel almost like the Bills losing was inevitable. So I would feel less bad because my brain is telling me Jacksonville. You just said Trevor Lawrence has been playing out of his mind for the last month or so. This Jacksonville defense has been good all year, and the Bills have looked like garbage the last month or so as well. I mean, obviously the Jet game, you have to take that with a grain of salt, but go back 2 weeks ago to the game at home against Philly. I am not overly impressed, and I truthfully, I think this Jacksonville defense is better than the Eagles. So it's hard for me to pick against Jacksonville. That said, this does feel like the year that the stars are sort of aligning for Buffalo, where, hey, Kansas City, your biggest threat for the last 4 years or so, is not in the picture. And so you'd think they'd have a clear, path to the Super Bowl. But as the 6th seed going down to Jacksonville, I think I'm going to take the Jags.
Wow. Okay. I don't think this is going to come as much of a surprise. Obviously, I was just raving about the Jaguars and said they were one of my dark horse teams. But I will be picking the Jaguars in this game. But next up, we have the 49ers going to Philly to play the Eagles at 4:30. Seamus, this is another head over heart moment here. You know I hate the Eagles more than anyone else in the world. And it's just really tough for me to pick against them. They are one of the few teams in the entire playoff landscape that has experience and has been there before and has won multiple playoff games with mostly the same cast. I think in the NFL playoffs that means something. They're also getting some guys back. They rested up last week. I think this is a team that no one is talking about, but they're still clearly one of the top teams in the league. I do think the 49ers are fantastic in their own right, but I just have this gut feeling that the Eagles are going to come away with the win, especially with the West Coast team coming across the country and playing on the East Coast. I'm going to go with Philly, unfortunately, but...
Fair enough. I'm also happy to hear you say that because we're going to disagree on some more picks other than just the Packers game, which is always good. It'll make for a fun episode next week when we go through these games. This is a little bit of, lesser of two evils for me. When you go down the list of teams that the Packers have struggled against in the regular season and the playoffs the last few years, right? Obviously, you take the divisional opponents, they're in their own bucket. But then the rest of the groups at large, Philly, obviously most notably last year, and this year in the regular season, and then the 49ers have just been our kryptonite for, as long as I can remember in the playoffs. It's really hard for me to look back at what the 49ers have done over the last 7 weeks. This is a team that won 6 games in a row coming into last week, dropped a heartbreaker, 13-3 to Seattle at home was it for the number 1 seed? Yeah. For the number 1 seed, obviously that's an emotional game. I think that they're going to be motivated coming across the country to play Philly. I just think that they're the better team. Philly has sort of stumbled across the finish line of every game that they've won this year. Granted, this is the NFL. It's hard to win, and the fact that they've won a lot of those games says a lot. But I just think when you're starting to play some of these more, playoff caliber teams, again, a team that's well-rounded, playing their butts off offensively and defensively, going to be coached up. You talk about experience. hey, how about those 49ers who have been in the NFC Championship game a handful of times the last few years? Brock Purdy, who's played in the playoffs before. Kyle Shanahan's obviously experienced. They've got Robert Saleh back. So I'm gonna stick with the hot hand here a little bit, and I don't really trust this Eagles team. They're a good collection of players, but I don't think that they're a very good team this year. There's not a lot of cohesion. There's been a lot of, narratives about the locker room and the players' togetherness and the dynamics therein. So I'm gonna stick with the 49ers here.
That brings us to the late slate on Sunday. We have the Chargers going up against the Patriots. This honestly, I could see this being a shared pick here, but not to jump the gun for you, but Seamus, what are you thinking for this matchup in Foxborough?
See, I had the same thought initially, but then I thought he is a Herbert guy, so maybe he'll go LA. Similar to what I said about the first LA team, coming across the country, always going to be a tough task. Playing in, you've got a dome stadium, playing in a cold weather stadium, outdoor. I don't know what the forecast looks like this week, but I can tell you I was in New England this week. It was cold as shit, so I assume it's going to be more of the same. And like you said before, Vrabel's going to have these guys up and ready to go. They're a little bit like the Packers from a couple years ago. They've got kind of like nothing to lose. Obviously, it's a little bit different. They are the 2 seed, right? There are some expectations that they're going to make a deep run here, and going to go up against a Chargers team that's quarterbacked by Justin Herbert, who has been there before, hasn't done much with being there before, but has been there before. But I think the Patriots are just the better football team, so I'm going to take the Pats.
Yeah, I think the no playoff wins for Herbert thing is just lingering over him right now, and I don't think that goes away this week. I think that the Patriots are just a better team, and I think they win this game and possibly in easy fashion too. But anyway, that brings us to the last game of the weekend. Monday night, Texans at Steelers. Those Steelers just snuck in after that Tyler Luke missed field goal. This honestly might be the toughest one of the entire slate for me to pick personally. I think I can see this game going one of two ways. I can see the Texans pass rush absolutely obliterating Aaron Rodgers, and they just shut him down from the get-go, don't get anything rolling, that's it. There's your game. Especially because there's really no receiving threat. I know DK Metcalf's coming back, but they have Stingley Jr. to lock him up, and then I don't really trust the longevity of a Calvin Austin and an aging Adam Thielen to make a difference against one of the best defenses in the league. I could see that happening, or I could see the Steelers managing to get the run going and just being a low score defensive slugfest. Whatever team makes the least mistakes win. And, the Steelers, who can take care of the football with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, kind of managing the game and just not making that crucial error. It's really, really close, but I think I'm going to go with my gut here. I'm going to go with the Texans. I really want to pick Aaron Rodgers. For once in my life, I want to root for him. But I just cannot see them getting past this defense. I feel like this is where an elite defense in the playoffs really, really pays off. And I think that they are going to have a field day against this pass protecting Steelers offensive line. So I'm going to go with the Texans in a gritty defensive battle. But I'm going to reluctantly take the Texans. But this is honestly a coin flip for me. It's really, really close.
Yeah, this is a super tough, again, head versus heart game here. To your point about going one of two ways, I think this game comes down to two things. And that is, how well can the Steelers' offensive line hold up against this pass rush? And two, can C.J. Stroud play like the C.J. Stroud we saw a couple years ago? Or does he sink into the C.J. Stroud that we saw, at the beginning of this year and some of last year? I don't know. I just don't know who I'm going to get with C.J. Stroud. This week, he played very well against what has been a decent Colts defense. I know that they haven't been as good in the second half this year as they were in the first half, but I don't know. He played fairly well, and has been playing better of late, definitely. Nico Collins back and some of that offense healthier. I still don't trust him though. So I'm a little nervous. And again, this Steelers defense is legit. So
Yeah,
it makes me nervous. I think the Texans defense is better than the Steelers defense, I think, but it's not as big of a gap as it is between the offenses here, or at least my like trustworthiness, I guess, with them. Like it's the age old case of like the Texans are way more boomer bust offensively than the Steelers. The Steelers, you know exactly what you're going to get offensively. The range of outcomes is much
yeah,
more narrow. The
yeah.
problem is that going to be enough? I don't know. If it comes down to the offenses, I'm taking the Steelers. But all else equal, it's the Texans for me. And to your point, like this defense is not just good enough to win playoff games. This is like a generational defense that is good enough to win a Super Bowl. This is a
Yeah.
very, very scary defense with, again, a CJ Stroud. If he can play three-quarters of as well as he did his rookie year, they will go very deep into this playoffs. That said, the Steelers have a very long streak. I think it's something like 23 games in a row they've won at home in primetime. The Texans, I don't believe, have ever won a road playoff game in their history.
That's wild.
So I'm going to go the other way and lean Steelers here. I'm going to lean on
Wow.
Mike Tomlin's experience. I'm going to lean on the veteran presence that they have offensively and defensively in Pittsburgh. But I would not be shocked if the Texans defense absolutely dominates this football game.
I think this is a huge opportunity for Mike Tomlin to win a playoff game for the first time since whenever it was, 2016, whenever, I don't even know if it could be longer than that. But this one is just really, really tough. And honestly, probably why they made it the last game of the Wildcard weekend. So, yeah, excited to come back next week and see how we fare. I feel like in previous years, we've had some weeks where it's just like one pick after another. We're just picking the same team. So
Yep.
hopefully this is a little bit more of an enjoyable listen for everyone and get a little diversity here and we'll start tallying those playoff records, see who picks them best. But regardless, I'm super, super excited to finally watch some playoff football. I think it's going to be quite the treat this weekend, and I still can't believe that it's here already too. I feel like I'm in denial partially.
Yeah, we say that every year, I think, but it really is true. And hopefully, the diversity of our picks is a sign of things to come. I think it speaks to how wide open this playoff really is on both sides and both conferences. Like, it really is anybody's game, which just makes the playoffs all the more exciting for everybody watching. So definitely very much looking forward to a playoff season, an exciting NFL playoff season. And not that we discussed it very much, but the continued excitement around the college football playoff as well that's kind of going on simultaneously here. I belabored the point a couple weeks ago about the great football weekend that we had coming up and back-to-back days. Hey, we got another good one this week.
Yeah, we got another 4 or 5 game stretch coming up.
We got college football Thursday, Friday. We got NFL football Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's another good football weekend.
For sure. I think just a quick, since you brought it up, I got it now. Huge win last week for the Ducks. Defense looked awesome, but here we go. We got a rematch against the team that I think is like written in the stars to win the college football playoff this year, especially after Ohio State and Georgia are out now. I really think whoever wins this game between Oregon and Indiana wins the whole thing. So I'm praying to God. I'm hoping Dan Lanning can get the boys buzzing. We don't get too cute because I know he likes to do that sometimes in big games, which I cannot stand, especially when it doesn't go our way. But I think, if this defense plays anything like it did last week, I think they have a legitimate shot in this game. I think Oregon is going to make this a game, and I really hope that we can. They got us once in Eugene before. Let's do it on a neutral site and take care of business and get farther than we ever have in this college football playoff era. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited, but I am certainly nervous. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I agree that I think the national champion comes out of this game. It's a little unfortunate that the bracket worked out that this isn't the national championship game. It feels like at this point that it probably should be. Maybe that's just because I'm a Miami hater. I am rooting for Ole Miss. I think I've been rooting for them. I think they're a fun team to watch. Especially, you want to talk about fun.
Yeah,
this
I mean,
past
Trinidad
week.
Shambles, unbelievable.
Just absolutely ridiculous stuff. But so I'm definitely rooting for them and hoping for fun all across the board. But I do think I agree with you that the national champion probably comes out of this game between Indiana and Oregon. So we'll see. It's exciting stuff on the horizon in the NFL and in college football.
Definitely. But with that being said, I think that does it for this inaugural playoff episode slash, 2025 regular season recap episode of Decleated. Thank you everyone for listening. Be sure to turn on new episode notifications so you never miss a new episode of Decleated. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at DecleatedPod, and on YouTube at Decleated Podcast.